Hello everyone, this is Raven here, and I'm going to be talking about CA's new video that they just put out today, talking about their different changes and balances across the races of the old world that's going to be coming out on the 10th of August for their newest update, alongside the Norskin DLC and the Regiment of Renowns for the different races that do not currently have them. So I'm just going to kind of highlight a couple of things here and there, so we don't need to listen to the video. He got me to talk to you about it, so I'm going to go ahead and skip forward here and just talk about what they did for the Warriors of Chaos. So right here, I'm going to go ahead and just unpause it. So they did make it to where the factions that you conquer as the Warriors of Chaos, when in regards to the Norskin factions, will become your vassals now instead of just military allies. So now, instead of just being allies that could rebel against you at any point, depending on whether they like or dislike what you're doing, they're going to be allies that pay you money at the beginning of every turn, and they're going to be more likely to just do whatever you say no matter what and no matter what happens. So that's a very good change. I'm liking what's happening right there with that change to the Warriors of Chaos. So very happy with that, because as we know, once you get a couple stacks with the Warriors of Chaos, you start incurring a very large debt and have a very heavy negative income every single turn. So having that bonus to income every single turn from all the different factions of Norsca that you could subjugate to your will is a very, very big bonus. So alongside that, they also made it to where different armies, once you put them in the encampment stance right here, if they're a maxed out army, they said they become more self-sufficient with a very big reduced cost for each of the units. So the upkeep cost of having all those units is drastically reduced by having them in this encampment stance here. So that's going to be very nice, because like I said, once you get those very large armies, they just cost so much. So having any bonus at all to the upkeep reduction of them is going to be massive. So very glad to see that. And they also talked about, and the recruitment tree here, that as you go along, you're going to start seeing a casualty replenishment rate bonus as you start as you start researching all these different technologies across the tree. So very good stuff, because as you know, playing the campaign as the Chaos, you have to go across all the factions and fight and kill them all pretty much. And once you burn the most major factions, then you get your victory over the old world. So being able to replenish your troops, as well as having a huge cost reduction in the encampment stance, so you can start actually replenishing your troops, that's pretty major. I'm very happy with the change that CA did to them. So it's going to make their campaign a little bit easier for people, especially when you're playing on Legendary or something crazy like that. And then over here, they start talking about the Val's Anvil Smith, so one of the followers / banners that you get for the Wood Elves. And then down here, it's the Young Stag, so 20 armor and a -3 campaign movement range. So that's a pretty nice little bonus, putting it on somebody like Orion, like they did here, giving him 50 armor, which isn't the best, but better than 30. And then having that unbreakable trait, and then the legendary item that gives him that plus 44% damage reduction under 20% health. That's a big deal. So every bit of HP costs it counts, in those atrocious fights, especially with an unbreakable unit like Orion. And then down here, the Young Stag giving +5 leadership to your armies and stuff like that. That's cool, I guess. But if they only added just a couple instead of just a whole bunch to vary up their race a little bit, I'm not too impressed. It's kind of just meh to me, but we'll see how it plays out. And then from here, they start talking about the Empire actually is going to have 4 cities as soon as the game starts. And this isn't for the player, this is just for the AI. So whenever the AI starts, regardless of what difficulty it's on, the Empire AI will have 4 cities turn 1. So they don't have to fight the Empire Secessionists, and if they lose that fight, the Empire Secessionists just take over, and then the vampire counts just run through all of Reichland and all the other small territories here and there. So that's very important, because I was watching the campaign playthrough with who was it, Ninja Hunt on Twitch.tv, and the Empire and Kislev did amazing work against the Norskins. They just held quite well. The vampire counts never got an upper hand on them. The Greenskins did come into a very, very good amount of power down in the south, and they were probably going to eliminate the dwarves pretty quickly, but I feel like they actually kind of rallied against the Norskin faction a little bit, because at one point the dwarves were invited to war against him, and the dwarves invited the Greenskins to war against the Norskins. So it's like, they're so far north that they're probably not going to do anything, because the Empire's in the way, and they're just such a powerhouse, just a super faction like they're meant to be. So it's very nice to see them not be the redheaded stepchild for once in this game. So very good stuff coming out of them. Also, something to note is that the AI is a little bit messed up. So, you have these really small settlements here, and when the AI gets new settlements and stuff like that, they don't know how to demolish buildings for some reason. So they get stuck with these wonky builds because they can't progress very far as tech trees are concerned. So if they were to inherit cities with different buildings that they already have, they would just be stuck with those buildings. So I have a mod that actually allows 10 settlements, 10 settlement recruitment slots or building slots, whatever they're called, for your major city. So Altdorf would have 10 settlements, and then each of these would still have 4. And then I also play with settlements going to go up to level 4 for the minor settlements. So that's something interesting that I like to play with, just because I like to see them be able to have all their high tier units, and that mod really enables factions to do that typically can't because of the weird AI trait that CA has mentioned, that they just don't know how to do that sometimes. That's why you see really weird armies, just like 11 outriders and a bunch of spearmen and then like a bunch of heroes in your lord. So it's, it's interesting to be able to start seeing some of the high tier units in the end game with that mod. So very good stuff. Next, they're going to start talking about the lords over here. So they start talking about Karl Franz. They allowed him to start making it to where all the lords that he recruits get +2 ranks. They're going to start at level 3, whereas he starts at level 1 or whatever. Not the biggest deal, honestly. It's kind of whatever, because in the end, as your lords start fighting, they do increase that level quite quickly. So it's kind of meh, good for him, I guess, but in the end, it's not the biggest deal. Then over here, they gave Ungrim Iron Fist the ability to increase the speed by 10% for all of his infantry units. So you might think that's a pretty big deal, but, dwarves are pretty slow. With a 28 move speed, I think, for most of their units, they're only going to be moving at about 30 move speed now. But the dwarf slayers are probably going to have a movement speed of like 45 or higher. I can't really remember what their speed is, but they're pretty quick. Azag gets that 10% research rate, and these starting units may be changing up here and there across the board. I'm not sure if they actually do, but the most important change that I saw was for Grimgor Ironhide over here. So when you take a look at this, he has +1 fightiness when in foreign territory. So if you don't know about him in the lore, he just goes all around the world kicking ass wherever he possibly can. So he goes to the north, and then there's just a giant battle raging between all the different races of the world, and Archaon the Everchosen. He just goes straight out to Archaon the Everchosen, and as he's dueling somebody else, he just kicks him straight in the nuts and puts his axe across his throat, and he's like, I'm the best there is, and pretty much just like walks home at that point, because he's like, you know what, I'm the best. I fucking kicked your ass, and you're the best that the Chaos factions have to offer. So, good for him. Good to see that. So, he's going to be able to keep that fighting us up and be able to start exploring the world like he's really meant to, and be able to beat up everybody that you want him to beat up. So, that's very, very good stuff for him. Continuing on, let's take a look here. Archaon the Everchosen got a -20 diplomatic relations to all factions. So, in the end, it's not really a big deal. You're just going to subjugate all of Norska, and then the rest of the races can fucking hate you all they want, because you're just going to burn them anyways, because that's what you have to do to win. So it is what it is, but it's going to spur a lot more wars a lot quicker because of that big debuff to the relationship. So that is what it is. And then they start talking about Kemmler over here. And they're going to highlight a couple of the abilities in his new skill tree regarding Trell. And I love that summoning animation. He comes up and he's just like, oh, hell yeah. Starts getting ready with that axe. So over here, starts degrading at half speed right here with the Undying Guardian. A Mortal Challenger. The skill tree is locked out, so I can't tell if it's blue or orange. Typically, if it's a blue arrow, it's a speed bonus, and if it's an orange arrow, it's a charge bonus. Then I have Perpetual Regeneration. Now, I'm not sure if this is an actual regeneration with like a 20% weakness to fire, or if it's just going to be like his HP just recuperates when he's in when he's in combat, kind of like Vlad von Karstein or whatever. The Black Axe over here is going to give him +10 charge bonus and +5 melee attack. And then for the final skill, which is what we really, really want to see, is the Eternal Bastion. So as always, it only takes 5 levels to get there. So I would probably go like 1 here, and then like 1 here, and then the rest of the levels, as soon as I could, go straight into this, because once you get the Eternal Bastion, Krell no longer degrades in combat. In battle, excuse me. So like once he's summoned, he doesn't deteriorate like the rest of the summons, like Raised Dead or Cygors or Manticores whenever you summon them with a spell. So he's going to be in combat until he dies, and that's going to make him an absolute beast, because you got the tanky Heinrich Himmler, where he pops his Cloak of Mist and Shadow for that +80% physical resistance, and then the Chaos Tomb Blade giving basically an invocation from the heck to himself and 2 other units nearby. So Krell's going to be doing the damage, and he's just going to be sitting there watching it happen. So that's good stuff. So let's go ahead and continue on. Let's see. Oh, and they start talking about the Necromancer right here. So right here, +7 casualty replenishment rate and -7% casualty suffered from all attrition types, and +4 leadership at tier 1, or excuse me, tier 2. So it's a pretty big deal. Having a Master Necromancer in your army is going to be able to help your army stay very healthy and keep them in the fight a lot longer, because, you know, when your low tier units like skeletons or Karen Wraiths, even with their extremely high cost and stuff like that, start getting that leadership broken, they start taking that constant damage, and it becomes a really big deal, because it just, the longer it lasts, the more and more damage it like they suffer, and it amps up quite seriously when they start having really low negative leadership. So it's very important to try and keep that leadership as high as possible, as much as possible. So very good stuff. So at tier 3, not quite sure what we're going to see there, but, you know, just a little bit better than this. So continuing on, then they have the Thrall Master, and this was a really interesting one. Doesn't look the best at first, but then once they kind of highlight it and I looked at it for a second, I was like, huh, that's actually a pretty big deal. So they're going to actually highlight level 4, or excuse me, tier 3 for this. So it's actually +4 skill for skeletal and zombie units. That's not the biggest deal for me. I don't care about skeletons or zombies. I mean, it's cool, I guess, when you need to have those like really low tier armies just for like a meat shield or whatever, and they're going to do all right with that +4 bonus to their melee attack, melee defense, and their leadership. But, you know, the biggest deal here is recruitment cost of -15% and a raised dead cost of -15% cost. So, you know, tying the recruitment cost of -15% with the unique building chain sometimes that you see for the forest that gives -20% cost for all units coming out of the forest. So when you're trying to get that Vargulf for Terrorgeist or whatever, it's going to be recruited at a -35% cost of its typical value. So that's going to get you lots of powerful units really cheap. So that's very important to have late game, so you can start getting those really expensive units, so you can keep focusing on your economy, building up your cities, while really building up massive armies that are just surrounded by extremely deadly monsters. So that's good stuff. Then they move on to talk about the Minotaurs over here for the Beastmen. They said that all variants will be getting a cost reduction, and then they're going to be doing some other tweaks and changes across the races, and general balance changes for units that are just overperforming, underperforming, that they want to do better or worse, depending on what's happening and what they think they should do. So for Minotaurs, I do agree with this. Minotaurs do get torn up pretty badly by missile units, because you know, the shielded variety right here does have that shield and can block 55% of missiles coming in from the front, but overall they only have like 15 armor, I believe. I don't think they have any more than that. If at most they're going to have 40. I can't quite remember. I know Gorbals have like 100 or something good, so they do get torn up by missiles even with the shield, so anything that gets through is going to do lots of damage to them, because they just don't have the armor to back themselves up with their massive size, and they're always able to be targeted because they're just so much bigger than other units. So I think it's 1300, 1400, and 1500 for the regular variant with dual axes, shielded, and then the great weapon variety of Minotaurs, or 14, 15, and 1600. I can't quite remember. So making them cheaper and allowing them to be fielded like more numerously, so just being able to get like 1 or 2 more units maybe than you typically would, I think that's going to make it a big deal, because though they will still get focused down pretty hard by missiles, you're going to have a lot more of them, so they're going to be able to do more work across the line than they typically would have been, because they're just going to be more numerous. So that's something I'm happy to see, because I love Minotaurs. They're like one of my favorite units in this whole game, so very good stuff. Then over here they move on to talk about the Dwarves, whose cannons and their what are these called? The bolt throwers are going to be doing lots more damage versus large units. So, you know, vampire counts versus dwarves, they typically bring like 4 Vargulfs or a bunch of Cryptors, something like that, that became famous from online videos by Ninja Hunt and something like that, because they do so much damage against all the infantry and their lords, and they don't really have anything to shut them down besides rangers, but the raised dead on top of those rangers can really decimate that back line. So it's really important to try and do as much damage as you can from a distance with these cannons and bolt throwers. So we're gonna see how these go. Hopefully that they can do something with that extra damage, because they've been shut down by very large units that get through their lines and start shutting down their back lines pretty heavily. So like I said, Vargulfs and stuff like that just absolutely tore up and just put complete dismay across the Dwarven line. So hopefully the cannons will be able to start stopping things like that from now on. So we'll see how that plays out. And then over here, let's see what else they talk about. They don't really talk about anything else special. They're just like, you know, patch notes are coming out tomorrow, and the DLC is coming out on the 10th of August, so keep an eye out for that. So Do keep in mind, I will be putting out a video tomorrow about the patch notes, and I am on a weird schedule for the next couple weeks. I will be working nights, but I'll go back to day shift, so I'll be putting out videos at a more, just a better time in general. Typically, I do one during lunch or something if I can, or just like right when I get home. So I'll try and get back to that instead of like really early, really early for me, but really late at night for you guys. So we'll see what I can do for that. And as always, guys, if you like what you saw, go ahead and leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and as always, comment down in the comment section down below if I can do anything to make this better for y'all to watch. And as always, I'll catch y'all later.